Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Brad, and for those of you guys that are new, I help people start or scale medical practices. Today, let's talk about they engineered you for fear, and here's how to break it. All right, when I say they, who am I talking about? I'm talking mostly about the institutions for teaching, the regular kind of upbringing of all of us that we went through our medical training. First off, medical school didn't teach us just anatomy and pharmacology. It taught us, in my opinion, what happens when you fail. You fail a shelf exam, maybe you got to repeat the rotation, or you just don't graduate residency or med school. You fail your boards, your career's in jeopardy. You make a freaking clinical mistake and someone can die. I remember on my surgery rotation, I just was joking with this trauma surgeon. I was like, I'm not really a morning person. What happens if I can't, wake up and be here at 4 a.m.? And he just no skipping any beat, just was like, well, then you're not in med school anymore, and just moved on to the next thing. It ingrains in us that there's a lot of risk that goes along with this. And for 11 years or so, or more, for those guys that did training, failure was the worst possible outcome. And I feel like it's not an accident. It does benefit creating great physicians, because a doctor who fears failure doesn't like to take exponential risk, doesn't want to then start a practice, doesn't want to negotiate, doesn't want to leave. They just become a cog in the wheel and part of the system. A doctor who fears failure signs the employment contract without even trying to negotiate anything. And on the flip side of that, I'm not encouraging to be reckless with patient care. Absolutely, that's sacred. What I'm talking and phrasing this entire podcast today on is failure sometimes is the price of becoming a great leader, building a great company. And I'm going to share with you guys a couple of amazing founders that are well known to have failed multiple times. So before I get into that though, in my opinion, the medical system, meaning hospitals, insurance companies, academic institutions, it's not neutral. They're not simply offering you a job out of goodwill. They're offering safety, predictability, a salary with usually a ceiling in exchange for your compliance. You're going to do it the MD Anderson way, or you're going to do it the X, Y, and Z way. And if that's who you are, good for you, right? If you just want to show up, do it their way, collect the paycheck and move on, great, good for you. I want more. I want to be in control of my life. I want to make good money. And I think for a lot of docs that I consult with, the mechanism that makes this trade of money for time work is a lot of fear. Fear of debt, fear of liability, fear of being wrong, fear of starting over, maybe just the fear of being a failure in general. Every one of those fears was instilled in you, I think, partially either deliberately or not necessarily deliberately, but in an indirect way, deliberately. This is all through a training system that severely punished failure at every single turn. Now, it makes an amazing cog in the wheel of physician, but it makes a horrible business owner. Here's the great thing, though, about all the greatest builders in history. Every single one of them failed publicly, painfully, in a huge way, and they did it before they won, and won big. So we'll talk about three real fast, okay? The first one, Walt Disney. He was fired for lacking imagination. Walt Disney was fired from his newspaper job in 1919. Apparently, the story goes is that his editor told him he lacked creativity and had no good ideas. Imagine that. Imagine being the freaking editor that was like, yo, Walt, your ideas suck. They're horrible. Then after that, what did he do? He was obsessed with his vision. He knew what he wanted to do with his life and embraced the failure. I mean, I'm sure it hurt like hell. But then he started up his first animation company. And I think you may be thinking, wow, okay, now he started Walt Disney. No, he started Laugh-O-Gram Studios and he went bankrupt. Think about that. So here you go. His first job was somebody telling him that you have no creativity, bro, hang it up. Then after that, he's like, screw it. I'm going to start my own animation company, Laugh-O-Gram Studios. And it went bankrupt. So you would think after that, okay, do you quit on your dream? Did Walt quit on it? You know how the story goes, right? Hell no, he didn't quit. He moved out to Hollywood, and you know what happened next. So what can you learn from this? Walt didn't fail because he was incompetent. He failed because he was operating inside a system that couldn't see what he was trying to build. He was trying to be a visionary and go against the grain, do something totally different. Of course you're going to fail if you're doing something outside the box like that. Think about it from the newspaper editor's standpoint. They want to do it the newspaper, the Kansas City Star way. They don't want to do it the Walt way. And what that editor probably said is, you're not a good fit for this business, and you're not going to fit into this ecosystem here. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, does this sound familiar? I don't know about you, but it sounds familiar for me. When I had my previous job as a hospitalist, I had to keep being set down and just be like, hey, Brad, those hospice discussions are taking too much of your time. We really don't enjoy that. And I was like, enjoy what? I'm building relationships. I'm helping people out in their final moments in life. Okay, well, you need to be in the ER and you need to be admitting and discharging. And what they're trying to tell me is that makes us money. The hospice discussion makes us no money. So how did I turn that around? I said, no, man. Okay, I want long-term relationships. So you know what? I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to start my own freaking primary care. And now we're getting close to 40,000 individual lives that we care for. Isn't that insane? The next one we'll talk about real fast, Henry Ford. He failed twice before Ford Motor Company. His first motor company, the Detroit Automobile Company, collapsed. Investors said he spent way too much time tinkering, not enough time producing. The second company, the Henry Ford Company, he was forced out by his own freaking investors. They brought someone else in to manage him. He walked away. And that company, by the way, later became Cadillac. He gave up equity in what was and what became Cadillac because he was like, no, I don't agree with this vision. I'm going to go and do my own thing. I'm going to do it the Henry Ford way without you guys, without these investors. Failure is a data point. It's not a verdict. It doesn't make you a failure. It didn't make him a failure. It didn't make Walt a failure. When you leave a hospital system, when a contract falls through, when a payer drops you, that's not a verdict on your worth. It's a data point of where you're moving forward for your next move. And the last one, of course, is Steve Jobs, right? He infamously got fired from his own freaking company, almost went bankrupt, and then they brought him back, and the rest is history on what he turned Apple into. So why am I talking about failure today? I even struggled with it in the very beginning. I mean, hell, even to this day, I have been turning down PE venture capital money because I said, I'd feel too bad if this investment for you didn't work out. And the funny thing is every single investor so far that I've turned down well over 10 million bucks in investment at this point in time. But every single one of them is like, Brad, that's the way investing goes. Just because things go south doesn't mean you're a bad person. Your business plan failed. It doesn't mean you did fraud. That's the way business is. Some things go, some things don't. And we know that going into this investment. Again, right there, these big boys and girls who are investing tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, they know that not every business plan is going to work out 100% the way. They know that you may have to pivot. They know that their return on investment might be zero. Am I saying this because you should go out there and enjoy failing? No, but I'm just saying it to those of you guys that are maybe like me and were scared of the fear of failure. I mean, hell, I talked about it when I interviewed with one of the big clinics here in town. When I interviewed with them and I said, I thank you for the job offer, but I'm going to turn it down. For those of you guys that are long-term followers, you know what he told me, right? You know that he came up and he said, Brad, this is a small town. When your practice fails, you'll be viewed as damaged goods in this town. See what we're doing? We're even freaking doing it to each other as physicians. This guy put the fear of failure in my mind because I bet that he didn't want me to go down this road and start up my own practice. He wanted me to just work for them and do it their way, their clinic way, which is good for him. I mean, he's got his brand and their brand, like Bible, if you will. There is a point in time for that. But if you're following this podcast, you're probably following it because you want to take back control. And part of that control is you need to embrace failure, not enjoy it, but you need to not let it define you. I mean, hell, I failed multiple times, like starting up my practice. I've done multiple things that never panned out. I spent so much money on stuff here and there. I mean, think of all the tens of thousands of dollars that I spent on marketing and ads that just never went anywhere. Hell, I bought a billboard or got a billboard. I don't think that got me a single freaking patient. That was $3,000 a month for 12 months. Not one freaking patient came from that. That was over $30,000. Think about that. So why don't physicians do this? Why do the smartest, most disciplined, most resilient people in professional life, people who survive med school, residency, boards, call nights, all the drama that comes with that, why do they fold when faced with the business risk? Because, in my opinion, the system front-loaded all the consequences. In medicine, failures come first, learning comes second. That's like the priority, is always prioritize never failing. And then they build you up to, obviously, just like I mentioned, that failure is a catastrophic event that you don't want to learn through failures. You want to learn by other people's failures or avoiding it. I mean, hell, that's what M&M is, right? Is you pronounce and you talk about your failure of what happened with your patient case. So hopefully other people can avoid that failure in the future. Beautiful from a medical education standpoint. Horrible when it comes to teaching physicians to be entrepreneurs and own their own freaking business. The sad part is, though, is that the learning required is the failure, at least when it comes to starting or scaling a medical practice. So now, if you're sitting in an employed physician, seeing 25 patients a day, getting a 2% raise, watching a hospital system bill $400 for the freaking visit you did when you know you're only taking home like $65, it's not because you aren't capable of more, but because somewhere between year one of med school and today, they convinced you that the risk of trying and failing is not worth it, but it is. The independent physicians building practices right now, the ones joining collectives or MSOs or just doing it by themselves, the ones that are negotiating their own contracts, owning their own building, they're not smarter than you. Hell, I've said in numerous videos, there's nothing special about me besides I'm willing to fail and I'm willing to bet big and I'm willing to work my butt off. Those of us that are more entrepreneurial, they decided that fear wasn't enough to obey and be part of a cog in the wheel. You want to own your control. So I want to leave you guys with one question today. Not a homework assignment, not a framework, just one question. What would you attempt if failure wasn't the end of the story? Because Disney, Ford, Steve Jobs, it wasn't the end of their story. They all failed. It doesn't have to be the end of yours either. Hell, I could give you 1,000 things that I screwed up in my own practice, but my practice is more successful than ever. Hell, I just created a video where I'm talking about potentially just stopping seeing patients altogether. If you're a physician who's ready to stop letting the fear of you be compliant, I want to talk to you. We're building something, and I'm building something, and I'd be happy to talk with any of you guys who want to help start or scale your medical practice. I'll leave a link below. Thank you guys so much for following along. Oh, before I do go, I'm thinking of starting something new. I'll leave my email down below. I want to start doing interviews, and I'm going to start asking people that I do work with and consult with, if you want to be a guest on my podcast, shoot me an email. I want to explore people who are experts in things that I am not an expert in, maybe surgery centers and other things. So if you want to be a guest on my podcast, leave me a message. I'll be around. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next one.